All right, can you see my screen? All right. So thank you all for joining tonight's discussion. And before we begin, I have responded to each one of you in terms of the discussion post two. And for those who have performed your peer responses today, I have went back in and made that update to the grade. Um, to give you a little background, I had to submit grades, although tonight is the due date for that second that second discussion post. I had to post grades this morning for administrative purposes, so you can continue to perform your peer responses, and then I'll see a notification where if you did additional work, I'll go back in and I'll update that grade. Okay, so again, continue to work on that discussion post, that second discussion post for week one tonight. So this week we are going to talk about supply chain strategy. But before we do that, again, your assignment for this week will be due on Friday, um, and then your responses from that assignment will be due on next Tuesday. Okay. Also, as with this week, or as with last discussion session, you have up until Wednesday tomorrow of next week. So I'm going to extend it. So you have up until Wednesday of next week to review this recording. And if you aren't attending this session, and provide a summary, upload it into the extra credit summary, and you'll get the extra credit. Okay. Um, in terms of IntelliPath will be due on Thursday. I always try to update IntelliPath as often as possible so that you can see where you stand in terms of grades. Okay, so again, the next chat will be on Tuesday at the same time. And then, so we're just going to go through real quick in terms of the attendance policy. Again, you have to attend once a week, and what counts as attendance is your participation in the assignments for each week, as well as your IntelliPath assignments. The attendance of this session unfortunately, does not count toward your attendance for this class. So you have to participate in the weekly assignments as well as participate within the discussion post or within the IntelliPath, I should say. Again, with the late policy, you have up until the last week of the course, the last day of the course, to submit any outstanding assignments, and you will only receive a 10% late penalty. So some of you have reached out to me, and I have addressed that. So again, if you get behind, it's never too late. You have 5 weeks to get all of the assignments in. In terms of IntelliPath, you're able to work ahead if you have a particular commitment coming up. I know that schools are coming back in session and we have a lot of craziness going on in terms of kids going back to school. So if you foresee an issue with that, then you can work ahead in your IntelliPath assignments to get ahead in case. But again, if you fall behind, let me know and we can make adjustments. For resubmission, if for whatever reason you want to build on a previous assignment, if you reach out to me and say you're going to resubmit a previous assignment or build on an assignment, then you could actually reach out to me and do that. Then we'll have no problem in terms of that originality score. Okay. So, as with last week, we said that we're going to talk about some of the resources within the class. So, I want to take some time out to talk about some of those options in terms of the Muse resources. So, the Muse resources will provide you with additional resources where organizations have to pay for this content in terms of logistics, supply chain management, and project management. Okay. Also, I will be providing additional materials within the discussion boards. I'll also be providing additional materials within the announcement. So it is a good practice for each time you sign into the course to check those announcements to see if anything was posted. For the Student Success Center, if you are losing points in terms of APA formatting in this course or in any course, the Student Success Center has tools to assist you in that. And then again with the SCM and logistics resource page, similar to the Muse resources and the SCM 210 resource guide, there are additional resources that will assist you in your learning from a supply chain and operations management and logistics perspective. You also have that the CTU library that will provide you with some peer-reviewed articles and resources that's going to help you with the course. And then I would say that my favorite resource will be Google Scholar, where you can go in and type in certain keywords, certain search terms on a particular topic that you are struggling with. So, for example, do you all see my screen? Do y'all see my Google screen? Or do you still see the presentation? Not sure how that works. So if you go into Google Scholar, the key thing to do is, so if I type in supply chain management, I will get a bunch of resources. But if I want to go into a specific topic, I put those keywords in quotes. So we're talking about strategy, supply chain strategy this week. And if I put those words in quotes, then it narrows down that particular topic. And then it goes into and it highlights the areas within that article where you can kind of get a overview or a brief synopsis of what that particular article is referring to or what the article is talking about. So I would say honestly that Google Scholar will be your best resource in that it kind of takes the content that you're going to find in the Muse resources. It's going to take the content that you're going to find in the CTU library. It's going to take the content that you're going to find in the textbook, and it kind of aggregates that into one area. So I would say that Google Scholar could be your one-stop shop in terms of your research. And I'm going Google Scholar literally almost daily to search to find information for my research. So Google Scholar is an excellent resource. And another thing I wanted to point out in terms of Google is that for those Muse resources and for those learning materials, create a Google Drive account. Google Drive is absolutely free up until a certain storage capacity, and save those documents. Although you may not think that you need them now, I have had so many cases where I pulled documents from my graduate work and my doctoral work because I just saved everything. I saved everything in Google Drive, you know. And even I've actually exceeded my capacity, my storage twice, but the storage is cheap, right? I think I pay $100 a month. I mean, a dollar a month or something like that. It's either a dollar or $3 or something like that a month for like I think 15 or 20 gigs or something like that. So it's an excellent investment in that you will be referring to and retrieving this information for years to come, and that goes for any content for any course, right? I mean, you're paying for this education, you're paying for this knowledge, keep it, right? You're paying for this content, you're paying for the literature. So download that literature, download those articles, and upload it to Google Scott, upload it to your Google Drive account. So in order to get to those resources which we talked about, if you go to the academics area and then you go to the academic resources within the student services, then you'll be taken to this screen here. And then once you select Business Center, you're going to have a tab for SCM 210. And then if you go into supply chain management, then you will be taken to those resources which I was referring to. So I suggest that you all go to these resources as they will again they're going to be very helpful as you progress through the course. They're going to be very helpful in terms of your career moving forward. So again, there's more information, and then down here in the course guides, that's where these Muse resources are. And then another thing I forgot to point out in terms of the Muse resources is that they're split out by the weeks, for example. So as one thing that I tell people is, once you understand the content for that week, I would go to the Muse resources and see what the Muse resources has for that given week. Okay, again, go into Google Drive or go into your local desktop, create a folder for each week for the class, and dump all this information in it. So it's easy access, and then you can just drag and drop into Google Drive. So in terms of additional learning resources, if you go into each week for assignments, you'll have those additional learning materials here. So if you have any questions in terms of the resources for the class. All right. So for your week 2 discussion board, so we're going to talk about supply chain strategy shortly. But in terms of your discussion board, we're going to talk about how the supply chain strategy must be aligned with your organization's business strategy, with your organization's mission and vision, right? And you're going to research the content and literature on supply chain strategy. But I want you to also do some research on organizations, on current organizations and their supply chain strategies. So, for example, what is Amazon's current supply chain strategy? What is Walmart's current supply chain strategy? Walmart's supply chain strategy is vastly different than Amazon's supply chain strategy because Walmart has come to the realization that it cannot compete with Amazon in the e commerce space, right? So they have to kind of create their own competitive advantage from a supply chain perspective, right? So I want you to perform some research on that. Go outside of the course readings. Go outside of of the examples that we talk about in the course to think about what are the building blocks of the supply chain strategy for organizations. Are organizations looking at technology to create a competitive advantage from a supply chain strategy perspective? Are they looking for expansion of their distribution centers to expand their global reach in terms of opening distribution centers to align with their supply chain strategy? Are they looking to outsource to other business partners and partner with other business partners that is a part of their supply chain strategy plan? So there's going to be a lot of different considerations. There's going to be a lot of different approaches that we talk about or that you're going to uncover once you start to begin to research this topic of supply chain strategy. So again, once you have an initial post, you're going to respond to your peers and kind of keep the conversation going. Ask some thought provoking questions in terms of their findings, in terms of their thoughts, in terms of supply chain strategy. Okay. Any questions on that assignment for this? So, in terms of an organization's supply chain strategy, what would be your definition of an organization's supply chain strategy? Any takers on that one? So, what would be your definition of an organization's supply chain strategy? That's the first question. And the second question would be what stakeholders or business partners should be a part of an organization's supply chain strategy? Organizational supply chain strategy should be concise and efficient. So, Eden, what would be an example of that? Lauren, end to end. Yep, that's good. But what? So, Lauren, what does end to end? What's your definition of end to end? Better healthcare for us, in my opinion, but for cutting costs. All right, so I'm going to address that one here shortly. Cohesive, current, and effective. I like that answer. So while Eden's typing, to to address the healthcare comment, I think that that is a very important point in that you are blending the HR perspective. You're blending the focus on people perspective of supply chain management, of supply chain strategy. Now you would say, okay, that's different departments. How does that have a impact on supply chain and logistics? Well, it has everything to do with healthcare and supply chain logistics. In that, the supply chain for an organization is the area where the company is going to cut costs, right? And if an organization is able to cut costs, now they have capital to reinvest within the organization. Where they reinvest, they should reinvest in the people. And to Lauren's point, if you reinvest in the people, you reinvest in training, you reinvest in job enrichment opportunities, and you reinvest in healthcare, right? You invest in more affordable healthcare for your employees. Now, there is one study out there, and we're going to talk about corporate social responsibility because that is one of my research interests. And, traditionally, organizations felt that, companies that had a increased focus on a company's workforce does do it at the detriment of the bottom line, right? So, but there was a study that was out there that I talk about extensively in my corporate social responsibility courses, and that there was a professor at the University of London where he performed a longitudinal study, a long-term study of the top 100 companies to work for in America. And of these top 100 companies to work for in America, all of these companies have a corporate social responsibility program in place. They have an increased focus on their workforce. So he wanted to see how do the top 100 companies to work for perform from a financial perspective. And what he found is that the top 100 companies to work for beat their competitors within their respective industries between 2 to 3% year over year for the last 15 years, right? What does that mean? Well, that means that if you invest in your workforce, then the profit's going to come, because now that you've empowered your employees, now your employees are happy to come to work every day, right? Now your employees are happy to find ways to reduce costs from a supply chain perspective, because they think that, or they know that if I continue to cut costs for my organization is going to continue to take care of me. If I take care of the company, my company's going to take care of me, right? So that's how the supply chain has a direct impact on healthcare of employees within an organization. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Any comments on that? All right, another statement. Let's see here. Concise and efficient. Eden said, and then so we're going to address Eden's and Angela's point, where the effectiveness of a supply chain. And in order to be concise, in order to be effective, in order to be efficient, you need to have that end to end visibility. You have to have that end to end collaboration among all business partners, all stakeholders within the organization's supply chain network. So our stakeholders are going to be our suppliers, our vendors, our manufacturers, our retailers, our customers, right? So if we're collaborating with all of those business partners, we all are on the same accord and we are all working toward the common goal, right? So if we are all on the same page, right, to reduce costs, to increase efficiencies, to reduce wasteful activities, then it's a win-win for our business partners from a profitability perspective. It's a win-win for our employees, because now we're able to reinvest our funds into our employees, right? So now we are developing a supply chain strategy, right? And within that supply chain strategy, everyone is involved within that strategy, which is probably one of the most important pieces to a supply chain strategy, where you need buy in from all stakeholders within the supply chain network. Okay. So, any questions on that statement as we go to the next one? So, Lauren, meaning pharmacy, we have adequate amounts of delivered on time. Yes. So to touch on that point, from a supply chain strategy perspective, supply chain strategies, I will say, are being overhauled at this point because of the pandemic. Supply chain holes have been exposed. So, because we have had a heavy reliance on, again, our Chinese manufacturers, Chinese suppliers, and because organizations look to have a lean philosophy, although it was not a true lean philosophy, now they are looking to revamp their lean approaches, right? Now they're looking to integrate our push planning system, right? So I'll say that, I said this last week, where there's no one size fits all approach where I use a push system, which is my traditional forecasting system, or a pull system, which is where I rely on my system, right, to tell me when it's time to order. And so we see that some of these traditional theories, some of these traditional approaches are not made for a disaster. They're not made for a pandemic, if you will. They're not made for an epidemic, right? So with that, yes, we can move back to these lean processes from a supply chain strategy perspective, but we need contingency plans in place. We need risk management plans in place, right? And that's what we are working with. That's what I'm working with organizations on. And what do those plans look like, right? So whenever you look from a supply chain strategy perspective, you have to also look at the what ifs, right? So we refer to this in the project management world as my unknown unknowns. I know that things are coming. I know that there's some unknowns coming. I just don't know what they are. Right. So that is one thing that, and you'll probably hear that term pop up a few times over the next few months because we don't know. We know that we're not done with this. We're not out of the woods yet, right? But we don't know what's coming. Unknown unknowns. And then that goes back to our pharmacies and medications delivered on time. So I am tracking what the phase is in terms of approvals for a COVID-19 vaccine, and I believe there's two pharmaceutical organizations in India that are in trials. I think there's one or two in US. There's one or two in the UK. So I bring up that point in that, okay, once they're approved by the FDA, how do we get all these vaccines out to all everybody around the country? We're not even talking about the world right now. How do we get the vaccines to the people in the United States? That's going to be one of the major supply chain dilemmas once this thing gets approved, right? So that's what we talk about when we talk about supply chain management, because we're not going to be able to fill the demand. We're not going to be able to have enough supply to fulfill the demand. And now you have a totally different problem where now people's going to start throwing money at it, right? And now the people who really need these vaccines aren't going to get it because those with the money are going to get it first. That's the reality of things. So we're going to be faced with a dilemma. Yes, we need a vaccine, but then we're going to face a different problem of how do we get to the people that need it. Okay. I actually, unfortunately, I will say unfortunately, I began a project with an organization that operated in what I discovered later on. I was there for 1 week. I did not. I went to my manager and said, I'm not working with this company. They operate in what they refer to as a gray market. So, Lauren, if you've heard of that, so they operate in the gray market where the pharmaceuticals aren't illegal, but they add a enormous markup because those drugs are scarce, for example. So, primary example, after Michael Jackson died, what, 10 years ago, propofol, you couldn't find it. And before Michael Jackson passed, it was like under $100 or like a couple $100 or something like that for propofol, for a bottle of propofol. But after Michael Jackson died and they took all this stuff off the shelf, this company could get it. So they would sell propofol to hospitals, not individuals, hospitals, for $5,000, where it was only a couple $100 beforehand. And that's how this company operated. And me being a week there, I understood that it was unethical. So I went back and said, I can't morally work with this company. I can't morally consult with this company. And then fast forward, I think 4 years ago, they got caught and they got shut down. Right. So I think that I'm not going to say that's what you're going to see. I'm just a little concerned that that's what some of this is going to lead to once that vaccine gets approved. But we have to begin to build a supply chain strategy once that vaccine is approved, because we have to get it to the people that need it, and not to the people that with the money. I know I was kind of went off on that one, but let's see here. So Eden, the organization should be able to come up with a product and sell it. It should be only through create and manufacture, but also market it. Yes. So Eden, to address that point, the strategy, and that is an excellent point, because we talked about external stakeholders and collaborating with external stakeholders, but you also have to collaborate with internal stakeholders in that the manufacturing needs to work with engineering. Engineering and manufacturing needs to work with marketing. So yes, we have this amazing product, but how are people going to know about it, right? And that needs to be built into the supply chain strategy. Because once we get this phenomenal product out, demand is going to explode for this item. So now we have to know how we're going to get to everyone. And that goes back to my Apple example. As you know, as soon as Apple announces a new iPhone, right, Apple has to work with every single department within the organization to say, okay, the CEO is coming on stage and then going to announce the new iPhone. Now we need to know how we're going to get it to the people, right? When are we going to get it to the people? When is it going to be in the Apple stores? When is it going to be in Verizon stores? When is it going to be in T-Mobile stores? So all of those considerations, all of those discussions play into the supply chain strategy for an organization. Everyone heavily involved from a crazy. So I think I touched on that earlier, just now, Eden. Angela, it fosters community, personal relationship within the company loyalty. Yes. So yes, going back to that point of that commitment to people, that is exactly what it does. In that there's one study out there to say that it takes an organization. So once an employee leaves a company, it takes an organization. Once you get all the parties involved, all the people involved, all the documentation involved, once you have to pay Indeed to publish a job posting, it takes 3 times that employee's salary that left to replace that employee, right? So once you get that labor involved, once you get the marketing involved, once you get the posting involved, now you have to hire that new employee. Now you have to train that employee. The other employee was just trained. And he left because of his management. He left because of the company, right? And now you're paying the price for it. So that's an excellent point, and that's a consideration that we as leaders have to take into account, right? It's not like the grass is greener. Oh, we can just replace these employees. We incur triple the cost to replace that employee. We still have to train this brand new person, right? We still have to take time from other employees to do the job posting, to understand what the requirements of that job role was, so we can replace the employee. So there's a lot of different things that have to be considered, that people overlook in terms of the importance of the workforce, of an organization's workforce. Angela, and it was exposed through the pandemic, real estate costs, and other new avenues, cost effectiveness that appeared. Yes. Hmm. What rear estate cuts? I'm not following that one. Yeah, Lauren, you couldn't get PPE. Yeah, that is one example that I'm going to continue to use because in the supply chain world, I mentioned this last week where we talk about we use the beer game, this fictitious simulation to demonstrate the blow up effect and demonstrate the importance of communication among business partners. But the pandemic is the reality. The pandemic is real life. The pandemic is something that people can relate to, right? And that's exactly what we're experiencing now. We're experiencing the blow up effect. And now I think that we're in that lull right now where we have those low inventory levels. So I just went to my grocery store today. I only get one bottle of rubbing alcohol. I can only get one roll of toilet tissue of paper towels, right? So now we have that low inventory level. But again, once October hits, you're not going to be able to walk through the grocery stores and Walmart without stumbling over pallets of paper because they are making that paper right now. They're making that hand sanitizer right now, and it's gonna sit. I don't think the hand sanitizer is gonna sit because people are going to be realistic and actually know that it's important to use. Or more people are going to be using hand sanitizer, but I think that spike in toilet paper, that spike is now gone. Right now, everybody has the toilet paper they need, and I laughed in the last section where those people who stockpiled all this toilet paper in March have storage units full of toilet paper they're trying to get rid of. Probably on Craigslist right now trying to get rid of toilet paper. So that's that whole blow up effect. Yeah. Some are making difference in price for cash paying patients. Lauren, what do you mean by that cash paying patients? I want this discussion, but because I'm very interested myself. The abilities to be internet based. Yeah, so that's another excellent point, Angela, in that I am actually consulting with funny story. So I'm consulting with one of my old students that was in the MBA program, and he approached me and said that he's the chief operating officer for a startup that started from the pandemic. So, given that all of these private practice institutions and all of these hospitals went remote, they started a company where they have those telehealth. They started a telehealth company pretty much, right? And in order to receive their insurance benefits, I'm working with them to become a differentiator in the market because there's all kinds of telehealth organizations popping up left and right now. And I think that this telehealth is here to stay in that once we get out of this pandemic, I think that or people will still be reserved to go to a traditional hospital if they can do telehealth, for certain appointments and things like that. So I think that a new market was created from this pandemic, and I'm working with that organization on some technological things. I can say I can't say too much about it because I signed a NDA. So we are leveraging. I will say we are leveraging technology to be a differentiator to create a competitive advantage. Okay, so I will say that this whole telehealth has been a new market that has exploded over the last 3 months. And again, that's aligned with the organization's supply chain strategy, right? So we talk about these different approaches to supply chain management where you have products that you can see and touch and feel, or then you also have offerings and services such as knowledge, right? We're delivering knowledge. It's still a part of the supply chain. It's still considered supply chain management, right? So we are developing technological advancements that are not seen within that new market to create a differentiator and to add to that organization's strategy, right? To be a to dominate the market. So that's just one example. So making a difference in price versus cash payments, abilities for internet based. So I try to address that. Lauren, meds earlier and shortages of shortened drugs. So yeah, that's exactly what that company did. They had a I don't even I really can't it will take me an hour to explain it. So but they had like an inside connection into these pharmaceutical companies, and they somewhat had like an intranet where they get pinged about, okay, there's 3 cases of this medication. How much you want? How much you paying for it? And it's kind of like eBay. It was eBay for pharmaceuticals. That's exactly what it was. eBay for pharmaceuticals. And then once they had the highest bid, then before it even got to their organization, they would sell it to the hospitals and then drop ship it from wherever it came from. Right. So again, it wasn't illegal. They weren't selling illegal drugs. They were selling prescribed drugs, and they were selling to the hospitals. They were just selling them for a markup because the hospitals couldn't get them anywhere else. So they had no choice but to pay it, and then pass the cost along to the customer, to the patient. As a nurse, I find that blowing out of proportion. So Joseph, you're saying that the whole pandemic is blown out of proportion? So I want to have this discussion. Angela, yes, the global expansion from home. And again, it's creating new markets. It's creating new markets. It's creating new opportunities. Any other comments on what we discussed? Any comment that I missed? I'll try to hit all of them. All right. So while Joseph is typing, again, I'm going to touch on this push versus pull cycle again. We touched on this with the current pandemic in that there was an interesting article, I will say, that I posted on LinkedIn about 2 months ago that got a lot of traction, where one organization said that manufacturers are too lean, right? And what they were trying to say by that is that because this lean philosophy has kind of been trending within the manufacturing and supply chain industry, organizations got kind of caught, in trying to reduce costs, and now they were stocked out because they were too lean. They weren't carrying excess inventory. But I argue that point in that why do I want to carry what I refer to, because we refer that to safety stock. We carry safety stock to buffer against uncertainties, right? So even the companies that had safety stock, that had buffer stock, got wiped out, right? So why am I going to carry pandemic stock? That's exactly what that's exactly what they're referring to. They want organizations to carry stock. They want healthcare distributors. They want healthcare organizations. They want hospitals to carry stock to buffer against something that's going to happen once in a lifetime, right? I mean, I don't know what the expiration is for like pharmaceuticals and certain medications, but in some, I'm assuming that it's only a year. So why am I going to carry inventory that I'm going to write off 40% of it in a year once it expires? It makes no sense. So we've been having these conversations within the industry in terms of supply chains are not too lean. Now this is a black swan, right? This is a once in a lifetime thing that's going to occur. But I will say that because this is a supply chain disruption, but this is a supply chain disruption of epic standards, right? Because I will say that these disruptions are cyclical, and what I mean by that is that we have these disruptions at least once a year. We have strikes in China. We have earthquakes in California. We have hurricanes in the south, right? So we have disruptions from natural disasters and things like that that kind of put a hamper on organization supply chains, right? But we bounce back from them in a matter of weeks. This is going to take months, if not over a year, to bounce back from because manufacturers have closed their doors, because labor individuals have lost jobs, so that puts a damper on the economy. And if individuals do not aren't making money, they're not spending money, right? So this is going to have lasting ramifications on individuals, but from a supply chain perspective, I think, in my opinion, that organizations should continue to operate from a approach perspective as they did before the pandemic. But the only change is to put supply chain mitigation strategies and add that to your supply chain strategy. Because something like this is going to come again. It's going to come again, right? How are you going to deal with it? I think that we're going to get another wave once the fall hits. Again, it's my thoughts. So organizations need to have a strategy to prepare for that if that wave arises, right? So going back to the push versus pull system, that push system is my traditional forecasting system where I look at my previous demand, right? I take that demand, I create a forecast from that demand, and I make inventory guessing that customers are going to buy it, right? A forecast is nothing but a guess, an educated guess, right? Because forecasts are never accurate. So that is the traditional forecasting approach. And people, although people know that forecasts are never accurate, they try to decrease that forecasting error as much as possible. There are individuals with full-time jobs. Is their job is to reduce that forecast error for the organization. That's their job. So that's that push system. You're being proactive in producing product. This pull system is what we talk about in terms of just in time, where we are being reactive. We are trusting our operational system. We're trusting the system to tell me when it's time that I need to order a product. And it's time to charge my laptop. Give me a second, please. All right. So that just in time system I'm using the system. I'm being reactive in replenishing my inventory. So let me go back through these comments here. So Angela, what do you mean by diversity in terms of safety stock? Are you talking about each item needs to have a safety stock level? All right, so Joseph, I see what you're referring to in terms of the pandemic, in terms of the COVID cases. There's also reinvention of supply chain growth through time, more needs-based situation. Yes, so yeah, so what you're talking about with that needs-based situation is you're exactly correct in that I don't think that you can create an overall I don't think you can create an overall supply chain strategy because of this situation. You have to put in a contingency plan for this situation, right? You have to put in a risk mitigation strategy for this situation. And I think that is that move forward plan. And that's what I've been working with organizations on for the last 3 months now. And to put those plans in place. We're not revamping their supply chain strategy, we're putting mitigation strategies in place. And some of those organizations you've heard of. Data and forecast is not necessarily, but you need to include more broad. Yeah, so to that point in terms of forecasts. Now, going back to the current situation, I keep talking about the current situation because it is unprecedented and it's very important. And you can take, hopefully you can take some of these, have some takeaways from this discussion to implement and talk about within your organization. So forecasts right now are artificial. You really cannot use forecast as they are currently output. There needs to be some human intervention to adjust and smooth out those forecasts because you have artificial spikes right now, because those artificial spikes come from companies not being able to find those resources elsewhere. If if they had a heavy reliance on China, they couldn't go to China. They had to come to U.S. suppliers, right? So you have you have some one off orders. You may have some long term agreements, but because it was an unknown of where the pandemic was going, those customers were stocking up, right? So similar you're not going to see similar trends that you're seeing right now. Those trends, that demand is going to level out. And as I said, you have to have those forecasters, those inventory planners, to make adjustments to the inventory, to adjust those inventory levels down, because right now they're artificial. And I have no answer to what percentage you need to adjust it down to. I've been working with a number of researchers from Rutgers. I'm working with researchers from Georgetown to understand how do we adjust our forecast to counter to address those spikes, those COVID spikes, what we're referring to them as. We have COVID spikes right now, right? So there's research going on right now. There are researchers such as myself we're working with people in the industry to say, how do we fix these forecasts? Because if we keep go on business as you, if we take those forecasts as gospel, that were output in April and May and June, we're going to have a bunch of excess inventory laying around our warehouses, right? We're gonna have whole aisles of toilet tissue. They're gonna be sitting there for 3 years, right? So, forecasts. That's one thing that we are working on in turn and for that in the current state. Long range forecast. You might hear that term, long range forecast. They're pretty much shot right now, right? So we're looking to make adjustments to those. All right, so let me go back through here. This is a great discussion. I like this engagement. I love this discussion. First off, is it meaningful to you all? Okay, this makes sense because everything we're talking about goes into your supply chain strategy. Yeah, Angela, you just need to add tires and wheels. Exactly. And those tires and wheels is the mitigation risk mitigation strategies. That's all it is. As a lot of nurses and other clinicians are ordering out of fear, and I believe we're going to need into another phase. So, Lauren, you are exactly correct. I think that you're having people stock up, and I think my wife just said last night where Amazon was restocked on Purell, and she said, "Should I go ahead and stock up?" I said, "Go ahead." I said, "Purell doesn't expire." Right? So you're gonna have some people that are gonna start stocking up again, and now you're gonna have those artificial spikes. So Amazon's back in stock with Purell. They're gonna get spiked again on Purell, right? But they can't add that into their long range strategy because moving forward, that demand for Purell might level out. Long lasting forecasts to not be overly zealous in our intentions. Yeah, so those long range forecasts, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't have the answer to that one. So, all right, we got 6 more minutes. So I think that we said before that your supply chain strategy needs to be aligned with your business strategy. And whenever you are talking about the supply chain strategy, whenever you are talking about what you refer to is, it needs to be clear, concise, and include all your business partners. You need to ensure that all of those bullets, all of those statements are aligned with the organization's business strategy, right? So in the last few minutes, I can get through this in 5 minutes. Is you have building blocks of an organization's supply chain strategy, and those are the operation strategy. So your operation strategy is essentially your day-to-day strategy, and your sourcing strategy is your purchasing strategy. So again, we purchase from Chinese manufacturers. Your distribution strategy. So anytime you hear distribution, think Amazon. You won't forget it. So whenever I create a distribution strategy, how big am I going to build my supply chain network? How many distribution centers am I going to have? Or am I going to use third party logistics providers? Am I going to send my products to Amazon, for example? So Amazon has what we could refer to as fulfillment by Amazon, where manufacturers will send their products to Amazon. They'll sell their products on their e-commerce website that's on Amazon. Anytime you order from that manufacturer's site on Amazon, Amazon gets notification, they ship it out, they build that manufacturer a handling charge. So I did that with one of my manufacturers. They sold auto parts, um, where they manufactured the products here in Pennsylvania. They shipped those products to fulfillment by Amazon. Once they got those orders in, they confirmed those orders, and then Amazon shipped it out. Amazon does all the work, right? So, but Amazon takes a 20% commission because they're pretty much doing everything. So that cut because they did so much work with Amazon. Amazon was billing them around 120,000 a month in handling charges, right? So multiply that by the thousands of customers that Amazon has in this fulfillment by Amazon model, right? And that's how they're one of the largest companies in the world. And I always say that Amazon was they just sold books 20 years ago. And now because of supply chain management, they're the largest company in the world, right? So that's what we talk about in terms of distribution strategy, and then customer service management. We'll get to that shortly, where we talk about customer relationship management. So for our operation strategy, we say that is my day-to-day strategy, my day-to-day operational strategy, where we always, and we're going to talk more about this when we talk about lean, where we strive for our to remove non-value added activities. I couldn't say that. So we'll talk more about that with lean, and that is the day-to-day operations and how we can make those operations more efficient across our entire supply chain landscape. Next is our sourcing. Again, that's going to be our suppliers and that strategic partnerships. So a lot of strategic partnerships were challenged. A lot of strategic partnerships are in evaluation, for those Chinese manufacturers. And again, some of that was outside of those manufacturers' control. But these U.S. Manufacturers and suppliers seeing that, okay, yes, we went to China for lower costs, but we have a lot of risk there. Maybe we need to look in the U.S., right, for alternate sources for manufacturing, for our suppliers, for our products, right? Now that is there was one survey where I think it was like 40, it was between 40 and 50% of organization manufacturers said that they are looking to bring their supplier base to the U.S. So traditionally, they relied on China for all of their raw materials and products, but now over half, close to half, or over half, are looking to move their supplier base to the US because they want to reduce that risk that was exposed with the pandemic. Okay. So again, we talked about distribution, we talked about our network optimization. So that's when we again talk about Amazon. So you can create your own distribution network where you're opening up multiple distribution centers across the country, or you can use third-party logistics providers like Fulfillment by Amazon to handle all your logistical needs. Right? I always say that depending on my volume, depending on my velocity, depending on how much product I sell, that is Amazon's core competency. That's what they do. That's what they're good at. Let them do it. Right? If you want to hit me with 20%, I might be if I build my own network, that's gonna be my overhead cost. That's the way I see it. Right. So you have to do that make versus buy analysis to say, instead of paying Amazon 20% on everything that I sell, is it going to be more cost effective for me to just build my own distribution centers, right, and handle it myself? So those are the supply chain strategies, that organizations assess from a long term perspective. And then again, customer relationship management. If you heard of the term Salesforce.com, that your Salesforce.com is essentially what the majority of organizations use for their customer relationship management needs. So Salesforce will track all customer interactions. It tracks all of customer complaints. It tracks sales. From there, you can also send out email blasts. So anything that has to do with customer service, increasing customer satisfaction, you do that within that customer relationship management tool. Now, I will say enterprise resource planning applications have a basic foundational customer relationship management tool, but because Salesforce is the best of breed application, almost all ERP providers have integrated or created APIs, connectors to integrate with Salesforce to feed that information from Salesforce into their ERP applications. So again, CRM. When we talk about CRM, we're talking about Salesforce. So let me go. Any questions? Because that's all we're going to cover tonight. I think that is the primary. That's the premise of what I wanted to cover tonight. I'm going to take a look at the chats here. Okay, very meaningful caution. I've worked in different types of customer service many years. I know firsthand about this huge part of the supply chain. Sometimes it is pleasant, other times it can make you want to scream. So yeah, Stephanie, you are exactly correct, and that's actually in the sick mind of mine. I say that yeah, Steve, Tim, you can go ahead and go. Yeah, I got you. I have you down. So I will say, Stephanie, that is why I came into supply chain management, is that there's never a dull moment within the practice. You're always going to have something different. You're always going to have a disruption, that you'll have to face. But I always say that with all of these disruptions, it has created experiences for me to share with you all, right? I always jokingly say I've seen the good, bad, and dysfunctional from an operations and supply chain perspective. And whenever organizations come and tell me we're different, no, you're not. No, you're not. I'm about to call out the 5 things that you're struggling with right now, and those 5 things are what 90% of the organizations I speak with struggle with, right? So yes, there are different environments, but the problems are the same. Okay. All right. Let me see here. Oh, Lauren, yeah, thanks for watching that Georgetown discussion. Yeah, dude. Yeah. So again, so Lawrence, you bring out a good point. Please go on and finish your discussion posts. Again, I had to post those grades for administrative purposes, so you'll get full credit. I just had to post the grades. All right. So if any more questions, just reach out to me.